89 missed calls light up the silent room. I watch my husband's name flash on the screen but do not touch it. He is locked out of his company accounts and shivering outside a secret apartment he thought I never knew about. I take a slow sip of wine and smile. It all started 2 weeks ago with a simple question from my maid. She asked if he was staying the night again. I just asked where. My name is Bella Snowhall, and I'm sitting alone in the center of a sprawling, silent living room in Seabrook Heights, Florida. The house is perfectly still. The air conditioning hums a low, expensive note that usually signals comfort, but tonight it sounds more like the quiet before a detonation. The only light in the room comes from the kitchen island where my phone is vibrating against the quartz countertop. It buzzes. It stops. It buzzes again. It has been doing this for 45 minutes. I do not pick it up. I do not even reach for it. I just watch the screen illuminate the dark room like a frantic lighthouse beacon. The caller ID flashes the same name over and over, Garrett Brady. There are 89 missed calls. 89? The number feels significant. It is aggressive. It is the digital equivalent of pounding on a locked door until your knuckles bleed. Between the calls, the screen fills with a cascade of notifications. WhatsApp messages are stacking up so fast they blur together. Text messages are arriving with such frequency that the phone actually skitters an inch across the smooth stone surface. I lean forward slightly, swirling the Cabernet in my glass, and read the previews without unlocking the screen. Call me now. Bella, pick up the phone. This isn't funny. Bella, where are you? Why isn't my keycard working? Bella, stop this. I take a slow, deliberate sip of the wine. It is a vintage Garrett bought for our 10th anniversary, a bottle we were supposed to open together to celebrate a decade of partnership. It tastes rich, oaky, and incredibly satisfying. I reach out with one manicured finger and slide the little switch on the side of the phone. The vibrating stops. The silence returns. Heavier this time, but now I have total control over it. I tap the Do Not Disturb icon. The screen goes dark. Tonight is not a night for conversation. Tonight is the night the algorithm executes. I turn my attention to the open laptop in front of me. It is my command center. As a compliance specialist for Silverline Compliance Studio, I have spent my career tracking corporate malfeasance, tracing digital footprints, and ensuring that powerful men play by the rules. Garrett always loved that about me. He called me his secret weapon. He never imagined that the weapon would one day be pointed at his own chest. A new email notification slides onto the top right corner of my laptop screen. It is the one I have been waiting for. From Eleanor Pace, CEO, Pacebridge Capital. Subject: We need to talk about your husband's conduct. I do not open it immediately. I do not need to read the content to know what it says. I wrote the script. After all. Instead, I click over to my tracking dashboard. It is a thing of beauty, a symphony of data points that I have been conducting for 14 days. The email tracker shows that the message I sent to the board of directors at 9 o'clock this morning has been opened 42 times. It has been forwarded 12 times. The attachment, a high-definition video file simply labeled, "Evidence has been downloaded by every single member of the senior leadership team," on a separate window. I am logged into the back end of a smart home management application. It is not for this house. It is linked to the commercial security system of the Pacebridge Capital headquarters. I am not supposed to have access, of course, but Garrett was never very careful with his passwords when he was drunk, and he was always drunk on his own arrogance. The log updates. In real time. Scrolling red text against a black background. 21 hours, 14 minutes. User access revoked. Garrett, Brady, 21 hours, 15 minutes. Biometric scan failed. Access denied. 21 hours, 16 minutes. Security badge, 4092 deactivated. I watch the screen like a director watching the rushes of her masterpiece. I can visualize him standing in the sleek glass lobby of the building he used to walk into like he owned the place. I can see him tapping his badge against the reader. Confused at first, then frustrated, then terrified as the red light refuses to turn green. I can see the security guard, probably old Mike, whom Garrett never bothered to greet stepping out from behind the desk to ask him to leave. The humiliation is not a side effect. It is the main course. I minimize the security window and bring up the family location app. It is a standard piece of software, the kind suburban parents use to make sure their teenagers are at soccer practice. On the map, my dot is a steady blue pulse here in Seabrook Heights. Garrett's dot is miles away, hovering in the downtown district, right on the edge of the river. He is not at the office anymore. He is standing stationary at a building called Baywater Towers. Specifically, he is standing outside Unit 1907, the secret apartment, the bachelor pad, the sanctuary he thought existed in a parallel universe where I was just a naive housewife who asked no questions. My phone lights up again, bypassing the silent mode because of the sheer volume of data pushing through. A WhatsApp message pops up on the lock screen, long enough to read the preview. Bella, please, they have locked me out of everything. My accounts are frozen. Security took my laptop. I am outside the condo and the code does not work. Just tell me what you want. I stare at the word condo. Finally, he admits it. For 2 weeks, he has lied, deflected, and gaslighted me. Now that he is standing in the cold with his corporate life in ashes, he admits the condo exists. I smile, but there is no warmth in it. It is a cold, sharp expression, the kind that cuts glass. He wants to know what I want. That is the wrong question. He should be asking how we got here. My mind drifts back to the moment the first domino fell. It was not a grand discovery. It was not lipstick on a collar or a receipt in a pocket. It was something much smaller, much more domestic, and infinitely more damaging because of its casual cruelty. It was the maid. I can hear her voice clearly in my head, heavily accented and utterly innocent, standing in my kitchen holding a pile of pillowcases that did not belong to my bed. Mrs. Brady, is the mister staying the night again tonight? I need to know if I should change the sheets. Time had stopped. My heart had hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs, but my face had remained a mask of calm. Again, that single word shattered the illusion of my 10-year marriage. Garrett had a place where he stayed the night, a place with sheets that needed changing, a place with a maid who knew his schedule better than his wife did. Most women would have screamed. Most women would have cried or thrown the pillowcases at the wall. I did neither. I am Bella Snowhall, and I do not react. I responded. I remember looking at the maid, keeping my voice level, my pulse steady, and asking the question that would unravel his entire existence. Staying the night where? Marisol. That was the beginning. Tonight is the end. I set my wineglass down on the coaster. The condensation rings are the only mess I allow in this house. On my laptop screen, I minimize the chaos of his destruction, the frozen bank accounts, the revoked access, the screaming emails, and I locate a single folder on my desktop. It is labeled simply Night Again, Master Plan. I double-click it. The folder opens to reveal a timeline, a meticulous grid of dates, locations, and evidence I have gathered over the last 14 days. It is a forensic accounting of betrayal. Every lie he told, every dollar he moved, every hour he stole from our family is documented here. I look at the first file in the list. It is dated exactly 2 weeks ago. I am ready to relive it. I am ready to walk back through the fire to show exactly how I burned his house down while he was still inside it. 89 missed calls. He thinks this is a misunderstanding. He thinks he can talk his way out of it like he closes a deal at Pacebridge. He has no idea that the deal is already closed, the ink is dry, and the terms are non-negotiable. I take a deep breath, filling my lungs with the cool, conditioned air of a house that is finally, truly mine. Let us go back to the start. Let us go back to the morning the pillowcases appeared. 2 weeks ago, the world was still spinning on its correct axis. It was a Friday morning, the kind of crisp, sun-drenched Florida day that real estate agents put on brochures. I was sitting at the kitchen island, nursing my second cup of coffee and reviewing a compliance audit for Silverline Compliance Studio. The house was quiet, smelling faintly of lemon polish and roasted coffee beans. It was the picture of suburban tranquility, a perfect stage for the lie I was living in. Garrett was in a rush. He always seemed to be in a rush lately. A man perpetually chasing the next big closing, the next equity partner promotion, the next high. He came thundering down the stairs, adjusting his silk tie with one hand and gripping his leather briefcase with the other. He looked handsome. I remember thinking that specifically. He looked like the man I had married 10 years ago, just with a few more silver threads in his hair and a much more expensive watch on his wrist. Tomorrow was our 10th anniversary, a decade. In the world of high finance and high-stress marriages, 10 years is practically a golden jubilee. "I have to run, Bella," he said, leaning over to peck me on the cheek. His cologne was sharp and familiar, a scent I had bought him for Christmas. "The client in New York is pushing the meeting up to 3 in the afternoon. If I do not catch the 10 o'clock flight, the whole deal falls apart." I looked up from my laptop, smiling. "Do you have to go? It is our anniversary weekend." He sighed, a performance of regret that looked entirely convincing at the time. "I know, I hate it too. But this is the final push for the managing partner track. I will be back by Sunday morning. I promise. We will do the dinner at that French place you love. The one with the impossible reservation list. I will make it up to you. Bella, I swear." He kissed me again, lingering just long enough to make me feel guilty for doubting his schedule. And then he was out the door. I heard the heavy thud of the garage closing, then the purr of his sedan fading down the driveway. I went back to work. My job at Silverline allowed me to work remotely most days, dissecting corporate structures and sniffing out regulatory violations from the comfort of my granite countertops. It is meticulous work. It requires an eye for detail, an ability to spot when a number does not add up or when a name appears where it should not be. About 20 minutes later, the silence of the kitchen was broken by a vibration. I looked over. Garrett had left his personal phone sitting on the marble counter, right next to the fruit bowl. He must have grabbed his work phone and forgotten the personal one in his haste. It happens sometimes. He carried 2 devices, one for Pacebridge business and one for family and friends. I stared at it. The screen was lit up with an incoming call. The caller ID did not show a name, just a local number. I hesitated. I respect privacy. I'm not the kind of wife who snoops through texts or tracks locations, or at least, I was not that wife back then. But if this was an emergency, or if it was the airline calling about a delay, he would need to know. He was probably halfway to the airport by now. I reached out and swiped the green icon. "Hello," I said, expecting a Delta Airlines agent or perhaps a spam caller. "Hi, Mr. Brady." The voice on the other end was female, bright, and carried a thick, melodic accent. It was not a corporate voice. It sounded domestic, friendly, familiar. "It is Marisol, from the condo," she continued, not waiting for me to correct her. "Do you want the king bed or the guest room prepared if you are staying the night again tonight?" My hand froze around the phone. The air in the kitchen seemed to drop 10 degrees in a single second. I did not speak immediately. My brain was trying to process the sentence, specifically 2 words that were bouncing around my skull like a ricocheted bullet. "The condo. Again. Mr. Brady," Marisol asked, her voice dipping with slight confusion at the silence. I took a breath. I forced my voice to remain steady, summoning every ounce of professional detachment I used when interrogating non-compliant executives. "This is Mrs. Brady," I said. My tone was polite but icy. "My husband will be delayed." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. Oh, Dios mío. I am so sorry, Mrs. Brady. I thought this was Mr. Brady's cell. I apologize. Do not hang up. Marisol," I said, cutting her off before she could disconnect. "I need to confirm the housekeeping schedule. Just to clarify, he is staying the night where—" Exactly, I could hear the hesitation in her silence. She was confused. She assumed I knew. Why wouldn't she? Wives are supposed to know where their husbands sleep? The downtown condo? She stammered, her confidence evaporating. "Off Baywater? The big tower? Which unit?" I asked. My free hand was already hovering over a notepad, a pen gripped so tightly my knuckles were white. "Unit 1907, she whispered. He usually texts me when he is bringing guests or staying over. I just wanted to be sure about the linens. I am so sorry. I thought you knew. Unit 1907, Baywater Towers. Thank you. Marisol. I said. My voice sounded robotic, like it was coming from someone else standing across the room. That will be all. I ended the call. For a long time, I just stood there. The kitchen was still sunny, the coffee was still warm, but the reality of my life had fundamentally shifted. It was as if someone had reached into the foundation of my house and pulled out the load-bearing beam. Again. She had asked if he was staying the night again. That implied frequency. It implied a pattern. It implied that while I sat here in Seabrook Heights, believing my husband was working late at the office or traveling for clients, he was actually in a condo I did not know existed, sleeping in a king-sized bed that required fresh linens. My first reaction was a wave of nausea so strong I had to grip the edge of the counter. My second reaction was denial. The human brain is a fascinating machine. It will construct elaborate architectural marvels of logic to protect the heart from breaking. Maybe it is a corporate apartment, I told myself. Companies like Pacebridge rent luxury suites for executives all the time. Maybe he stays there when he works late to avoid the 40-minute commute. Maybe he wanted to surprise me for the anniversary. Maybe he bought it as an investment property and was waiting for the right moment to tell me. But then I looked at the note I had just written. Marisol. Unit 1907. Bringing guests. You do not hide a corporate apartment from your wife of 10 years. You do not need a maid to ask about which bed to prepare if you are just crashing after a late meeting. And you certainly do not have a history of staying there again without ever mentioning it. I spent the rest of the day in a fog. I tried to focus on the Silver Line audit, but the numbers on the screen kept blurring. I found myself staring at the phone he had left behind, tempted to crack the passcode, but I did not know it. He had changed it recently. He said it was a new security protocol from IT. I checked my own phone constantly, waiting for him to text me from New York. I needed him to text. I needed him to send a picture of the Manhattan skyline or a selfie from the client's dinner. I needed proof that Marisol was wrong, that she was a crazy woman who had dialed the wrong number. The hours dragged on. 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock, finally, at 6 in the evening. My phone chimed. It was a text from Garrett. He must have been using his work phone or his laptop. Boarded. Love you. That was it. 3 words. I stared at the message. Boarded. Past tense. Implying he was on a plane. Implying he was taking off for New York. I pulled up the flight schedules for the local airport. There was no flight to New York that had boarded at 6 o'clock. There was one at 5:30 and one at 7. He was lying, or he was sloppy, or he didn't care enough to check the actual timetable because he knew I wouldn't check. But I did check. I walked around our large, empty house, turning on lights as the sun went down. I walked into the bedroom we shared. I looked at the bed with its perfectly arranged pillows, the ones Marisol didn't have to ask about. I lay down on my side of the mattress, but sleep was impossible. The silence of the house was heavy, pressing down on my chest. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that cheerful, accented voice asking the question that would end my marriage. Is the mister staying the night again? Again. It was the word again that hurt the most. It meant I wasn't just a fool today. I had been a fool for a long time. By midnight, the tears had dried up, replaced by something colder, something harder. I stopped crying and started thinking. I am a compliance officer. My job is to find the truth buried under layers of corporate deceit. I trace funds. I verify assets. I expose liars for a living. Why was I treating my own husband with less scrutiny than I treated a stranger's tax returns? I rolled over and looked at the empty space beside me where Garrett should have been. Staying the night where I whispered into the dark. Unit 1907. Tomorrow. I decided. Tomorrow. I will not sit here and wait for a text. Tomorrow. I will go to Baywater Towers. Even if it meant tearing down everything we had built. I needed to see the room where my husband became a stranger. I closed my eyes, but I did not sleep. I just waited for the sun to rise. The sun came up on Saturday morning. but it brought no warmth to the house in Seabrook Heights. I had not slept. I had spent the night staring at the ceiling, letting the silence of the bedroom press down on me until I felt like a specimen pinned under glass. By 7 o'clock, the paralysis of shock had worn off, replaced by the cold, humming engine of my professional training. I am a compliance officer. I do not guess. I verify. I sat down at my desk in the home office, the coffee in my mug already cold. I needed to treat this like a case file before I drove downtown to confront the physical reality of Baywater Towers. I had to understand the digital footprint. I needed to see the ghost in the machine. I started with the path of least resistance. I picked up my own iPhone and opened the Find My app. Garrett and I had set up family sharing years ago, ostensibly to keep track of the kids and find lost devices. But really, it was just another tether in the web of a modern marriage. I watched the map load, the grid lines filling in slowly. There was my dot, pulsing blue in the suburbs, and there was Garrett's dot. It was not in New York. It was not at JFK or LaGuardia. It was not even hovering over the Atlantic Ocean. The icon for his iPad, which he always traveled with, was sitting stationary downtown, right along the curve of the riverfront district. I zoomed in. The map resolved into a cluster of high-end developments. The dot was pinned precisely on top of a building labeled Baywater Towers. He had not even bothered to turn off his location sharing. Why would he? He was so arrogant, so assured of his own narrative, that he assumed I would never check. He thought I was the type of wife who simply believed what she was told, because the truth was too inconvenient to look for. I took a screenshot. That was Exhibit A. Next, I logged into our primary joint bank account. This was the account we used for the mortgage, the private school tuition, the groceries. It was the financial face we showed the world. I scrolled through the last 3 months of transactions. On the surface, everything looked normal. Whole Foods, gas stations, utility bills. But I know how to look for patterns. I know that fraud is rarely a single massive withdrawal. It is usually 1,000 tiny cuts, hidden in the noise of daily commerce. I filtered the search. And there they were. Every 2 weeks, on a Thursday or a Friday, there was a transfer of $250 to a recipient listed as Marisol Clean and Care. I had assumed, in the vague way one does when scanning a statement, that this was for a cleaning service at his office, or perhaps a service for his mother's house. But the dates did not line up with his office cleaning schedule. Then I saw the larger hits, a payment of $4,200 to Baywater Residential Services back in January, a charge of $3,800 to Urban Nest Furnishings in February. My stomach twisted. Urban Nest was a high-end modern furniture store. I remembered him complaining about the cost of our new sofa, saying we needed to be budget-conscious. Yet here he was, dropping nearly $4,000 on furniture for a place I had never seen. I opened a second browser window and logged into our shared family email account. We use this for utility bills and kids' school notifications. But sometimes, if you are careless, digital receipts from personal purchases bleed into the wrong inbox. I went to the search bar and typed Brady. I scrolled past the school newsletters and the HOA updates. Then I saw it, a monthly statement for an American Express Platinum card. I frowned. Garrett had a Platinum card, but he told me he had closed it last year because the annual fee was too high. Apparently, he had just stopped having the paper statement sent to the house. I downloaded the PDF for the last billing cycle. It was a roadmap of a secret life. There were charges for valet parking at Baywater Towers, time-stamped at 11:30 at night. There were concierge service fees. There were late-night food delivery orders, sushi, Thai, expensive Italian, all delivered to the zip code downtown, all on nights when he had supposedly been at client dinners in Dallas or Chicago. I pulled up his work calendar, which he synced with mine so we could coordinate childcare. I placed the windows side by side on my monitor. The correlation was perfect. It was a mathematical match. March 12th. Calendar said, strategy session in Atlanta. The credit card showed a $70 Uber Eats order to Baywater Towers and a movie rental on Amazon Prime. April 4th. Calendar said, overnight with investors. The bank statement showed a purchase at a liquor store 2 blocks from the riverfront. He wasn't traveling. He wasn't working. He was 20 minutes away, playing house in a luxury high-rise while I sat here helping our children with their math homework. I needed context. I picked up my phone and called Sarah, my college roommate, who was now a top-tier broker in the city. "Hey, Bella," she answered, her voice bright. "Long time no see. What's up?" I kept my voice casual. "Just a friend asking for a favor." "Hey, Sarah. Listen, weird question. I have a client at work looking into corporate housing downtown. Do you know anything about a building called Baywater Towers?" "Oh, absolutely," she said. "That is the premier spot right now. Super exclusive. A lot of executives keep units there as a pied-à-terre to avoid the bridge traffic, but it is pricey. Bella, you are looking at $5,000 or $6,000 a month for a one-bedroom with a river view. Why is your client looking to buy?" I felt the blood drain from my face. $5,000 or $6,000 a month. "No," I said, "just checking the compliance on a lease." "Thanks, Sarah." I hung up. $6,000. Suddenly, a memory surfaced. About 6 months ago, Garrett had mentioned he wanted to diversify our portfolio. He had talked about investing in rental property for the kids' future trust fund. He said he was moving some liquidity around to set it up. I had trusted him. I had signed the papers he put in front of me without reading the fine print, because he was my husband and he was a finance partner. He wasn't investing for the kids. He was investing in a bachelor pad. I went to Instagram. I pulled up Garrett's profile, then the profile of Pacebridge Capital. I started scrolling back, looking at the photos with a forensic eye. There was a picture from 3 weeks ago, captioned "Late Night Grind, Closing Deals." It showed a laptop and a glass of scotch on a glass table. The background was blurry, just city lights. But I zoomed in. Reflected in the dark window behind the laptop was not an office cubicle. It was the interior of a living room. I could see the edge of a gray velvet sectional sofa. I could see a distinct, abstract light fixture that looked like a suspended halo. I cross-referenced it with the website for Urban Nest Furnishings. There it was. The halo pendant light, price $1,200. He was not at the office. He was at the condo. He was posting evidence of his affair on social media and disguising it as work ethic. My anger was starting to freeze over. Turning from hot rage into something sharp and usable, I had almost enough. But I needed the smoking gun. I needed something that tied him definitively to the unit. Something that proved this wasn't just a rental for work, but a home he controlled. I went back to the shared email. I clicked on the folder labeled Spam. Most people never check spam. Garrett certainly didn't, but automated systems often get filtered there. I scanned the list of junk mail, Viagra ads, phishing scams, Nigerian princes, and then, halfway down the list, a sender ID Baywater management system. My heart hammered against my ribs. I opened the email. Subject access update. Dear Mr. Brady, your guest access code for Unit 1907 has been updated as requested. The new code is 8842. This code is active for the next 24 hours for your scheduled guest. I stared at the screen. Guest access code. Unit 1907. This wasn't a hotel room. This wasn't a corporate suite booked under the company name. This was his unit, and he was generating codes for guests. I sat back in my chair. The confusion was gone. The frantic need to make excuses for him had evaporated. I looked at the timestamp on the email. It was sent yesterday afternoon, right before he supposedly left for the airport. He had generated a code for someone. He was not just staying there. He was hosting. I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. It was the calm of a surgeon picking up a scalpel. I knew exactly what I had to do. I did not need to cry anymore. I needed to document. I hit print on the email. Then I hit print on the bank statements, the credit card bill, and the screenshot of his location. I stood up and walked to the printer. The pages were still warm. I gathered them into a neat stack, stapled them, and placed them in my briefcase. I walked to the hallway mirror and looked at myself. I looked tired. My skin was pale, and there were dark circles under my eyes, but my jaw was set. I grabbed my car keys from the hook. It is not that he is hiding something, I said to my reflection, my voice echoing in the empty house. It is that he thinks I am too stupid to look for it. I walked out to the garage. I was not going to wait for him to come home on Sunday with his lies and his duty-free perfume. I was going to Unit 1907, and I was going to introduce myself to the life he thought he could keep in a box. I pulled my car up to the valet stand at Baywater Towers, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Beside me on the passenger seat lay a dry cleaning bag containing one of Garrett's charcoal gray suits. It was my prop, my alibi, my ticket into the fortress. I had rehearsed my lines in the rearview mirror for 10 minutes before driving over. I was the dutiful wife dropping off a suit for her busy husband. I was helpful. I was harmless. I was Mrs. Brady. I stepped out of the car. Smoothing down my dress, the valet took my keys, and I walked through the revolving glass doors into a lobby that smelled of expensive white tea and money. The concierge desk was a slab of polished marble that looked heavy enough to crush a person. A young man in a sharp uniform looked up as I approached, his smile practiced and bright. "Hi there," I said, forcing a breezy tone that felt foreign in my throat. "I am Bella Brady. I am just dropping this off for my husband, Garrett, in Unit 1907. I do not want to disturb him if he is working, but he needs this for Monday." I held my breath. This was the moment where he should have stopped me. This was where he should have said, "Mr. Brady does not live here, or I need to call up for authorization." Instead, his smile widened with recognition. "Mrs. Brady. Of course. Welcome to Baywater. Mr. Brady told us you might be stopping by this weekend to drop off some wardrobe." My heart missed a beat. It was a physical blow. Sharp and breathless, Garrett had told them. He had anticipated this. He had prepared a script for the staff just in case his snooping wife ever tracked him down. It was not just a lie. It was a contingency plan. He had turned me into a predictable variable in his risk management model. "Let me escort you up," the concierge said, coming around the desk with a key card in hand. "The elevators are secure access only." I followed him, my legs feeling like they were moving through water. We rode up in silence to the 19th floor. The elevator doors slid open to reveal a hallway lined with abstract art and plush carpeting that swallowed the sound of our footsteps. "Here we are," he said, tapping the card against the lock of 1907. The light turned green. "Do you need anything else, Mrs. Brady?" "No, thank you," I said, stepping across the threshold. "That will be all." The door clicked shut behind me, sealing me inside the silence. I stood in the foyer, clutching the suit bag, and looked around. It felt like stepping onto a movie set. The apartment was stunning, bathed in natural light from the floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the river and the city skyline. But it was not a home, it was a showroom. The furniture was low and Italian, sleek leather and chrome that looked uncomfortable and incredibly expensive. There was a wet bar fully stocked with the single malt scotch Garrett claimed was too pricey to keep at our house. The floors were pale oak, spotless and gleaming. But what struck me most was what was missing. There were no photos, no finger paintings from our children on the fridge, no stray toys, no pile of mail on the counter. It was a space erased from me. It was a version of Garrett's life where Bella Snowhall and her 2 children simply did not exist. I walked deeper into the apartment, the feeling of intrusion prickling on the back of my neck. I hung the suit bag in the hall closet, my hand trembling slightly as I reached for the handle of the master bedroom door. I pushed it open. The bed was massive, a California king dressed in charcoal linens, the ones Marisol had asked about. The room was minimal, masculine, and cold. I walked to the walk-in closet and slid the door open. It was full. On the left side hung Garrett's clothes. I recognized them. There were shirts I had ironed, blazers I had helped him pick out, shoes I had seen him polish. He had moved half his wardrobe here without me noticing, slowly siphoning off his life piece by piece. But on the right side of the closet, the air shifted. There hung a row of silk dresses, emerald green, deep crimson, black lace. They were beautiful, and they were tiny. Size 2. Size 4. I am a size 8. Below them sat rows of high heels with red soles, the kind that cost $800 a pair. I reached out and touched the silk of a nightgown. It was cool against my fingertips. This was not a guest room. This was a shared life. I backed out of the closet and went into the ensuite bathroom. It smelled of eucalyptus and something sweeter. On the vanity, sitting next to Garrett's razor, was a jar of luxury face cream. I picked it up. Engraved on the silver lid were 2 initials, L. Next to it lay a hairbrush. I stared at it, feeling bile rise in my throat. Tangled in the bristles were long, golden strands of blonde hair. My hair is dark brown. I looked at that hair and felt a wave of visceral disgust so strong I almost dropped the brush. Then I saw the perfume bottle. It was a niche brand, something rare. I picked it up and sniffed the nozzle. Sandalwood and jasmine. I froze. 6 months ago, Garrett had come home smelling like this. When I asked him about it, he laughed and said, "Oh, that is the new air freshener they use in the conference room at Pacebridge." Strong, right? I had believed him. I had actually complimented him on it. I put the bottle down with a clatter. The bathroom felt suffocating. I needed to get out. I walked back out to the kitchen area, on the pristine white quartz island. There was a paper bag from a high-end sushi restaurant nearby. I looked inside. 2 sets of chopsticks. I pulled out the receipt stapled to the side. Unit 1907, Brady. The timestamp was from last night at 8:30, while I was at home heating up leftovers. He was here, eating dragon rolls with the owner of the blonde hair. Next to the bag was a yellow Post-it note stuck to the wine fridge. It was Garrett's handwriting, scrawled in blue ink. Wine for Lena. Friday. Lena. The name hung in the air. It was no longer an abstract concept or a shapeless shadow. Her name was Lena. She had initials. She liked expensive sushi. She wore size 4 dresses. And she was sleeping in my husband's bed on Friday nights. I walked over to the nightstand beside the bed. I opened the top drawer. Inside, sitting on a black velvet lining, was a cheap smartphone. A burner. It was black, nondescript, the kind you buy with cash at a convenience store. The screen was dark, but I could see the notification light blinking a slow, rhythmic blue. I did not turn it on. I knew better than that. If I woke it up, it might ping a location or show as active. Instead, I took out my own phone and photographed it. I took a close-up of the serial number on the back. I would run it later. I moved to the living room, to the sleek media console under the television. I opened the cabinets one by one. In the last drawer, tucked under a stack of Architectural Digest magazines, I found a manila folder. I opened it on the coffee table. It was the lease agreement for the apartment. I scanned the document, my eyes searching for Garrett's name. It was not there. The tenant was listed as Brady Consulting and Hospitality, LLC. I frowned. I knew every entity in Garrett's portfolio. I knew Pacebridge. I knew our family trusts. I had never heard of Brady Consulting and Hospitality. I flipped to the signature page. It was Garrett's signature, unmistakable in its aggressive loops. Below it, where the guarantor information was listed, I saw his social security number, and below that, the bank account number used for the security deposit. I recognized the last 4 digits. It was our joint savings account, the one we used for emergency funds. He had created a shell company using our marital assets to lease a love nest for himself and Lena. This was not just adultery anymore, in the eyes of the law, and more importantly, in the eyes of a forensic compliance officer. This was fraud. This was embezzlement of marital funds. I closed the folder and took a picture of every single page. I stood up and walked to the bookshelf that faced the living area. It was filled with art books that looked like they had never been opened. I reached into my purse and pulled out a small device, no larger than a domino. It was a high-definition mini camera with a 30-day battery life and a motion sensor. I had requisitioned it from the Silverline supply closet months ago for a corporate espionage case I was working on. I slid it between 2 books, The Art of War and a biography of Napoleon. The lens had a perfect view of the sofa and the kitchen island. I pressed the tiny button on the side until a green light blinked once, then vanished. It was recorded. I did a final sweep of the apartment before I left. I needed to catalog the scene. I took a photo of a wine glass sitting in the sink, the rim stained with a faint print of pink lipstick. I took a photo of a silk scarf draped carelessly over the arm of the leather chair. I took a photo of the box of condoms I found in the bedside drawer, a brand we had not used since college. I stood in the center of the room one last time, absorbing the silence. This place was designed to be a sanctuary, a fortress of solitude for a man who wanted to have everything. But now, it was something else. It was a trap. I am not just a suspicious wife anymore. I whispered to the empty room. I looked at the hidden camera lens, a black eye staring back at me from the bookshelf. This is not an affair. This is a crime scene. And I am the lead investigator. I picked up my purse, smoothed my dress, and walked out the door, leaving the suit bag hanging in the closet like a ghost. I sat on the floor of my living room in Seabrook Heights, with a wedding album open on my lap. The leather cover was heavy, the binding stiff. Inside, photographs of a younger, brighter version of myself smiled back at me. It was a version of Bella Snowhall who believed she was half of a partnership, not just a supporting character in someone else's one-man show. I remember exactly how we started. I was a law student, sharp-tongued and exhausted, burning the candle at both ends. Garrett was a junior sales associate, hungry and charming, with a smile that could sell ice to a polar bear. We were electric. He used to tell everyone that we were the unbeatable team. He called me his secret weapon. Back then, he would bring me his pitch decks and his contract drafts at 2 a.m, and I would redline them until they bled ink, tightening his language, protecting his liability, making him sound smarter than he actually was. He loved my ambition then. He loved my brain because it was an asset he could leverage. But somewhere along the climb from sales associate to partner at Pacebridge Capital, the narrative shifted. As his paycheck grew, my role shrank. The compliments changed. He stopped saying, "You are brilliant, Bella," and started saying, "You look so pretty when you smile, Bella." He stopped asking for my input on contracts and started asking why dinner was not ready. I looked at the timeline of our life through the lens of his social media. I pulled up his LinkedIn profile on my iPad. It was a masterclass in personal branding. There was a photo of us at the firm's holiday gala last year. He is in the center, holding a glass of champagne, looking like a titan of industry. I am slightly behind him, out of focus. Just a splash of color and a supportive smile. The caption read, "Behind every successful deal is a stable home. Grateful for the support." It sounds sweet to the casual observer, but I know how to read between the lines now. Stable meant silent. Support meant invisible. He had spent the last 5 years carefully constructing a public image where he was the dynamic, jet-setting provider, and I was the fragile, domestic goddess who needed to be protected from the harsh realities of the world. He had weaponized my own career against me. I remember the conversation we had 3 years ago when I wanted to return to full-time work. I had found a great position at a top compliance firm. I was excited. I had bought a new suit. Garrett had sat me down, pouring me a glass of wine, his face a mask of concern. "Bella, are you sure?" he had asked, his voice dripping with that patronizing sweetness. "You know how bad your anxiety gets when you are under pressure. Remember what the therapist said, you need to avoid stress. I just want you to be happy. Why do you not stay part-time? Enjoy the kids. Enjoy the life I'm working so hard to give us." It was cheap psychology, but it was effective. He used my own mental health as a leash. He convinced me that I was the problem, that I was too fragile to handle the world. So I retreated. I took the smaller job. I let my network fade. I let him become the only sun in our solar system. Now I see the pattern. He did not want me to work because he cared about my anxiety. He wanted me to work less, so I would have less power, less money of my own, and fewer connections who might spot him at a downtown bar with a blonde woman named Lena. He had even planted the seeds of his double life in plain sight. I scrolled to a video on his Facebook page from a barbecue we hosted last summer. He was standing with a beer, laughing with a group of his colleagues. I was in the background, flipping burgers. "Oh, you know Bella," he was saying to the camera, grinning. "She is a total suburban girl. She hates the city, cannot stand the traffic or the noise. I keep the house out here for her sanity, and I crash downtown when I have to grind for you guys." Everyone laughed. It was a good joke. The devoted husband made a sacrifice, but it was a lie. I never hated the city. I lived in the city when we met. I loved the energy. I loved the noise. He had invented that persona for me, the neurotic suburban housewife, to create a perfect alibi for himself. If everyone believed I hated going downtown, then no one would ask why I was never at the company dinners. No one would ask why I never visited the condo. He had built a wall of assumptions around me, brick by brick, so he could live behind it. I looked up at the ceiling corner of the living room. A small, blinking white light stared back at me. It was one of the security cameras Garrett had installed last year. "For your safety," he had said, "so I can make sure you and the kids are okay when I'm traveling." I stood up and walked into the kitchen. There was another camera on top of the fridge. I walked into the hallway, another one facing the stairs. I pulled up the camera feed on the Home app. The angles were specific. They did not cover the back door. They did not cover the garage entry where a thief would likely break in. They covered the living room sofa. They covered the kitchen island. They covered the precise spots where I spent 90% of my time. These were not security cameras. They were monitors. He was not watching out for intruders. He was watching me. He wanted to know where I was every second of the day, so he could calculate exactly how much time he had with Lena. He wanted to ensure his asset was staying put in the storage facility he had built for her. I felt a cold, hard rage settle in my chest. It was not the hot, tearful anger of a heartbroken wife. It was the clinical, detached fury of a lawyer who realizes the opposing counsel has been forging documents. This marriage was not a relationship. It was a PR campaign. He had managed the optics perfectly. To the board of Pacebridge, he was the family man with the lovely stay-at-home wife. To me, he was a hard-working provider sacrificing his time. And to Lena, well, I was sure he had a narrative for her too. Probably my wife does not understand my script, or perhaps we are only together for the kids. I closed the wedding album with a sharp thud. The sound echoed in the empty house like a gavel striking a bench. I was done looking at the past. I needed to look at the exposure. I sat down at the kitchen table and opened my laptop. The screen glowed in the dim light. I was not thinking about his betrayal anymore. I was thinking about his liability. Garrett was a partner at Pacebridge Capital. They managed billions of dollars in pension funds and university endowments. Their brand was built on integrity. Their slogan was literally, "Trust is our currency." I knew how these firms worked. I wrote the rules for them. I typed into the search bar Pacebridge Capital Employee Handbook Code of Ethics. It was a public document, hosted on their investor relations page. I downloaded the PDF and hit Control F. I typed fraternization. The search results highlighted a paragraph on page 42, Policy on Personal Relationships. Senior executives and partners are strictly prohibited from engaging in romantic or sexual relationships with direct reports or junior staff members. Failure to disclose such relationships is grounds for immediate termination. I thought about the hair and the brush. I thought about the sushi for two. I thought about Lena. I opened a new tab and searched LinkedIn for Lena Pacebridge. The first result was a profile for Lena Hart, investment analyst at Pacebridge Capital. I clicked on her photo. She was young, blonde, and beautiful. She had been working there for 18 months, and under her experience section, it listed her direct supervisor, reporting to Garrett Brady, senior partner. I smiled. It was a terrifying smile. This was not just adultery. This was a violation of corporate governance. This was a breach of fiduciary duty. And then I remembered the text message I had seen on the burner phone picture I took, the one about the wine for Friday. There had been another message below it, one I had barely registered at the time because I was so focused on the woman. "Mr. Haynes loves the view. Thanks for letting us use the spot. Mr. Haynes." I typed Haynes City Pension Fund into the search bar. Robert Haynes, Director of Municipal Investments. Garrett was not just sleeping with his subordinate. He was using the secret apartment the one paid for with our marital funds, disguised under a shell company to host clients. He was providing an off-the-books venue for a city official. My compliance brain kicked into overdrive. Providing unreported benefits to a government official to secure investment contracts. That had a name. It was called bribery. I sat back. The room felt very quiet, but inside my head, alarms were ringing. I had thought I was investigating a cheating husband. I had thought I was dealing with a domestic tragedy. But I was wrong. I was sitting on a massive regulatory violation. I was sitting on a scandal that could not only end his marriage, but could strip him of his license, his career, and his freedom. He had built this entire life to keep me in the dark, thinking I was just a suburban girl who was scared of the city. He forgot that before I was his wife, I was the one who fixed his contracts. I looked at the camera on the fridge, staring unblinkingly at me. "You should have checked my resume." "Garrett," I whispered. I created a new folder on my desktop. I did not name it divorce. I named it Pacebridge Compliance Violation Case Number 1. I was not going to just leave him. I was going to audit him. I sat at my dining room table, the glow of my laptop screen the only light in the dark house. I had downloaded the Pacebridge Capital Employee Handbook and their Code of Ethics directly from the Investor Relations portal. It was a thick, dense PDF, the kind of document most people scroll past to click, "I agree." But for a compliance officer, it is a treasure map. On the screen, Garrett's face smiled at me from a sidebar video titled, "Integrity First." It was a training module he had recorded 2 years ago. He looked handsome, trustworthy, and leader-like as he spoke about transparency and the sacred duty of managing other people's money. I muted him. I did not need to hear his voice to know he was lying. I just needed the text. I scrolled to page 34, Policy on Fraternization. The language was unambiguous. Romantic or sexual relationships between partners or senior executives and direct reports are strictly prohibited to prevent conflicts of interest. Failure to disclose such relationships is a terminable offense. I thought of Lena Hart. I thought of her blonde hair in my husband's hairbrush and her name on the org chart directly under his. That was strike one. That was a fireable offense. But Garrett was a top earner. Companies often look the other way for rainmakers if the only victim is a wife. I needed more. I scrolled to page 58. Misappropriation of company assets and bribery. The use of company funds, resources, or facilities for personal benefit is prohibited. Furthermore, offering gifts, hospitality, or entertainment to government officials to influence investment decisions is a violation of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act and state bribery laws. I stared at the words of government officials. I needed to go back to Baywater Towers. I waited until Tuesday night. Garrett had told me he was attending a charity gala for the Arts Council. I checked the gala's guest list online. He was indeed a platinum sponsor. He would be stuck there shaking hands until at least 11 o'clock. I drove downtown, wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses despite the darkness. I used the key card I had swiped from his jacket pocket the night before he had thought he lost it, and I had helpfully suggested he check his car, giving me 24 hours with the original. Unit 1907 was quiet. It smelled of cleaning products. Marisol had been there. I went straight to the bedside table. The burner phone was still there. I prayed it had a battery left. I pressed the home button. It had 12%. I did not know the passcode, but I noticed a smudge pattern on the screen. It was a simple L shape. I swiped it. The phone unlocked. My breath hitched. I went straight to the messages. There was a thread with a contact saved only as L. Garrett. "The pension fund guy is loving the view. He is asking about the after party. Are you ready, L? I am on my way. Do I need to bring the wine? Garrett, no. I stocked the bar. Just bring your charm. We need him to sign off on the allocation by Friday. Wine at 1907 after he leaves creates the right mood. L, is this safe? What if compliance checks the receipts? Garrett, do not worry. Baywater is off the company books. It is a ghost. Just make sure Haynes leaves happy. I felt the blood drain from my face. This was not just an affair. This was a transaction. Garrett was using the apartment, and Lena. to sweeten a deal with a client. And not just any client. I scrolled back and found a reference to Haynes. I pulled out my own phone and logged into Garrett's iPad, which I knew was auto-logged into his work email. I searched for Haynes, Robert Haynes, director of the City Municipal Pension Fund. He was a government official. He managed the retirement money of firefighters, teachers, and sanitation workers. And Garrett was bringing him to a secret apartment, plying him with expensive scotch and a 24-year-old blonde assistant to secure an investment allocation for Pacebridge. This was textbook bribery. It was a felony. I took photos of every single text message. I took a video of me scrolling through the thread to prove it wasn't a doctored screenshot. Then I saw one more message, sent 2 days ago. Garrett. Once the Haynes deal closes, my bonus clears, I am moving the liquidity from the family trust next month. Then we can look at that property in Cabo. Brady Consulting will buy it. Just you and me. My heart stopped. The family trusts. He wasn't just using his bonus. He was planning to raid my trust fund, the money my grandfather left me, which I had foolishly allowed Garrett to manage as the trustee because he was the financial expert. I left the apartment shaking, not from fear, but from a cold, crystalline rage. The next morning, I called in sick to Silverline. I drove to a diner 3 towns over and met Thomas Reed. Thomas and I had gone to law school together. He had gone into the public sector and was now a senior investigator for the State Financial Crimes Division. He looked tired, nursing a black coffee. "Bella, you look intense," he said. "Is everything okay?" I folded my hands on the table. "I need to ask you a hypothetical question, Thomas, and I need you to answer me as a prosecutor, not a friend." He leaned in, his eyes narrowing. "Go on." "Hypothetically," I said, choosing my words with surgical precision. If a senior partner at a major investment firm was maintaining an undisclosed luxury property through a shell company and using that property to host a director of a municipal pension fund providing alcohol and female companionship in exchange for an investment contract, what would that look like to your office? Thomas set his cup down. The casualness vanished from his face. "That looks like 10 to 15 years in federal prison." "Bella," he said quietly, "that is bribery, wire fraud. And depending on how the money moved, money laundering, if we had evidence of that, we would not just fire the guy. We would x-ray his entire life. We would freeze his assets, seize his passport, and dismantle his career before he could call a lawyer." He looked at me, studying my face. "Is this close to home?" I took a sip of water. "It is just a case study I'm working on for a compliance seminar." Thomas reached across the table and tapped my hand. "Bella, if this is real, and if it is who I think it is, you need to protect yourself. If you have evidence, do not sit on it. And for God's sake, get your own lawyer, because when the state comes down on a firm like Pacebridge, the blast radius is huge." I nodded. "Thank you." "Thomas," I drove home and went straight to my office. I created a new master folder on my encrypted hard drive. I named it Condos and Crimes. I uploaded everything, the video from the hidden camera in the bookshelf, the photos of the text messages about Haynes, the screenshots of the burner phone serial number, the lease agreement for the shell company, the bank statements showing the transfers. I built a timeline in a spreadsheet. March 3rd, 7 in the evening, dinner with Mr. Haynes. March 3rd, 9:30 in the evening, access code for Unit 1907 used. March 3rd, 10 o'clock at night. Text from Garrett to Lena regarding making him happy. It was a perfect chain of evidence. Then I opened the file for our family trust. I logged into the brokerage account. I saw a pending authorization form, drafted but not yet executed. It was a request to transfer $400,000, nearly 40% of the principal, to Brady Consulting and Hospitality, LLC, for real estate investment purposes. He was going to steal my inheritance to buy a villa in Mexico for his mistress. He was going to take the money my grandfather earned working in a steel mill and use it to fund his escape plan with a girl who was barely older than the wine he was drinking. I stared at the screen until the pixels blurred. The last shred of affection I held for Garrett Brady died at that moment. I had been grieving the loss of my husband, the father of my children. I had been mourning the man I loved, but that man did not exist. In his place sat a criminal, a thief, a predator who saw everyone his clients, his mistress, and his wife as resources to be exploited. I closed the laptop. The grief was gone. In its place was a terrifying clarity. "He wants a war," I whispered to the empty room. "I am not going to fight him for custody. I am not going to fight him for alimony. I am going to hand him over to the state of Florida wrapped in a bow of felony charges. He thinks Unit 1907 is his safe house. He thinks it is his sanctuary. He has no idea that I have turned it into his prison cell." I picked up my phone and dialed the number for the toughest divorce attorney in the state, a woman known as the Shark of Seabrook. While it rang, I looked at the picture of Garrett on the wall, smiling his perfect, integrity-first smile. "You are not just going to lose me, Garrett," I said. "You are going to lose your freedom. And the best part, you paid the rent on the place where it is all going to happen." I stood in my home office, the smell of dry erase markers sharp in the air. On the wall, the large whiteboard that Garrett used to sketch out his quarterly goals was now covered in my handwriting. I had wiped away his sales targets and his motivational quotes. In their place, I had drawn 3 distinct columns. I stepped back, capping the marker with a satisfying click. This was not a revenge fantasy. This was a legal strategy memo. When you are preparing to dismantle a corporation or a marriage, you do not rely on passion. You rely on structure. I looked at the first column. I had labeled it Pacebridge. Underneath, I listed the objective: total professional discreditation. I sat down at my desk and opened a fresh email draft. The recipient was Eleanor Pace, the CEO, along with the entire board of directors and the general counsel. I did not write a tearful letter about a broken heart. I did not use the words husband or cheating or betrayal. I wrote a compliance report. Subject: formal complaint regarding violations of Code of Ethics and Corporate Governance to the board. Attached is a dossier documenting repeated violations of the Pacebridge Capital Anti-Fraternization Policy and the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act by senior partner Garrett Brady. The evidence includes 1 digital correspondence confirming an undisclosed sexual relationship with a direct report, Ms. Lena Hart. 2 financial records of a shell entity, Brady Consulting and Hospitality, utilized to lease an undisclosed property at Baywater Towers. Unit 1907. 3 video and audio evidence of said property being used to provide unreported hospitality to Mr. Haynes, Director of the City Municipal Pension Fund, during active contract negotiations. Please regard this as a formal whistleblower submission. I attached the files, the video of Lena in the apartment, the screenshots of the text messages, the receipts for the expensive scotch. I read it over. It was cold. It was clinical. It was perfect. It stripped Garrett of his humanity and reduced him to a liability, to Eleanor Pace. Garrett would no longer be the charming rainmaker. He would be a walking lawsuit. I scheduled the email to send at 9 o'clock on Friday morning. I turned back to the whiteboard and looked at the second column regulators. Objective criminal exposure. This was the dangerous part. This was the point of no return. Getting him fired was one thing. Sending him to prison was another. But I remembered the text message about using my trust fund to run away to Mexico. I remembered the arrogance in his voice on the recording. I opened a secure browser used for anonymous tips to the State Financial Investigation Bureau. I uploaded the audio file I had pulled from the hidden camera. The quality was crystal clear. You could hear the clink of ice in a glass. You could hear Garrett's voice, smooth and confident. "As long as your fund comes to us, Robert, Baywater are on me. Anything you need, any company you want, it stays off the books." I typed a brief summary of the transaction dates and the shell company details. I did not sign my name. I did not have to. The evidence spoke a language that prosecutors understood perfectly. I scheduled the submission to sync with the email to the board. 9 o'clock. I looked at the third column family. Objective asset protection and dissolution. I had already met with the shark, a woman named Patricia who wore Saint Laurent suits and smiled like she had shark teeth. We had locked everything down. I logged into the trust fund portal. The transfer request Garrett had initiated was still pending. I canceled it. Then, on Patricia's advice, I initiated a full freeze on the account, flagging it for suspected unauthorized activity. By the time Garrett tried to move that money, the bank would have locked the digital vault so tight he would need a court order to buy a stick of gum. I had the divorce papers drafted. They were aggressive. I was asking for the house, full custody, and a distinct lack of alimony given the gross marital misconduct and dissipation of assets. But paperwork was not enough. I needed witnesses. I thought of Marisol. I had invited her to lunch yesterday at a quiet cafe near the condo. She had arrived looking terrified, clutching her purse like a shield. She thought she was in trouble. She thought I was going to fire her or scream at her. Instead, I ordered her the lobster salad and paid in cash. Marisol, I said gently, you are not in trouble. But my husband is. She relaxed. Just a fraction. I need to know. I said, how long has Ms. Hart been coming to the apartment? Marisol looked down at her hands. About a year. Mrs. Brady, maybe 14 months. She leaves things, hair clips, makeup, and Mr. Brady, he tells me to wash the sheets before you come. But you never come. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. And the older man. The one with silver hair. Haynes? She said, yes. He comes for dinner. Sometimes he stays very late. Mr. Brady tells me to leave the good whiskey out for him, and sometimes Ms. Hart stays when Mr. Haynes is there. That was the nail in the coffin. I reached into my purse and pulled out an envelope. It contained $5,000 in cash. This is for your time, Marisol, and it is in advance. If anyone asks police, lawyers, company people, I want you to tell them exactly what you told me. Nothing more, nothing less. If you need a lawyer, I will pay for one. Do we have a deal? She looked at the money, then at me. She nodded. Sigh, Mrs. Brady. He is not a good man. I had one more stop. The building manager at Baywater Towers. I went to see him in his office, playing the part of the concerned, slightly embarrassed wife. I am so sorry to bother you, I said, adjusting my sunglasses. My husband is worried that a competitor might be stalking him. He thinks someone has been following him up to the unit. Is there any way I could see the hallway logs? Just to give him peace of mind, the manager, a man who clearly valued discretion but valued avoiding a scene even more, hesitated. It is strictly confidential. Mrs. Brady, I leaned in. Please, he is so stressed about this big merger. If I could just tell him I checked and it is safe. He sighed and turned his monitor. I pulled out my phone and recorded the screen as he scrolled. There it was, a digital parade. Garrett enters with Lena. Garrett entered with Robert Haynes. Lena enters alone with a keycard. It was irrefutable visual proof that Unit 1907 was Grand Central Station for his illicit activities. I returned to my home office and looked at the whiteboard. The plan was complete. The trap was set. But there was one last thing. The psychological component. Garrett is a master manipulator. I knew that the moment the bomb dropped, he would try to spin it. He would cry. He would beg. He would tell me I was crazy, that I misunderstood, that he did it all for us. He would try to gaslight me one last time. So I opened a Word document and wrote a letter to Bella. Do not forget how you felt when you found the hairbrush. Do not forget the condoms in the drawer. Do not forget that he was going to steal your grandfather's money to buy a villa for his mistress. Do not forget that while you were home helping the kids with homework, he was selling you out for a bonus check. He does not love you. He loves the cover you provide. Do not let him back in. I printed it out and folded it into my pocket. An anchor. I looked at the calendar. Tomorrow was Friday. It was not just any Friday. It was the day Pacebridge was announcing their new managing partners. Garrett had been preening about it for weeks. He had bought a new tuxedo. He had reserved a table at the most expensive steakhouse in the city to celebrate with Mr. Haynes and, presumably, Lena. He expected a coronation. I was planning an execution. I checked the scheduled emails one last time. 9 o'clock. I synced the hidden camera in the condo to my private cloud. I set up a live stream link on my laptop so I could watch the fallout in real time. I walked into the bedroom. The bed was vast and empty. Garrett was staying at the condo tonight, ostensibly to prep for the big day. I lay down on my side of the mattress. The sheets were cool. The house was silent. Usually, the silence made me feel lonely. Tonight, it made me feel powerful. I reached out and touched the empty pillow beside me. "Enjoy your sleep, Garrett," I whispered into the darkness. "Because tomorrow, you wake up in a world where I control the narrative." He had spent 10 years buying my silence with fake smiles and lies. Tomorrow, at 9 o'clock sharp, I was going to pay him back, and the interest rate was going to be catastrophic. At 9 o'clock in the morning, the kitchen in Seabrook Heights was filled with the aggressive brightness of the Florida sun. I sat at the island, my laptop open, a mug of black coffee steaming beside it. I was not shaking. I was not crying. I felt a strange, electric buzz under my skin, the kind I used to feel right before cross-examining a hostile witness. I looked at the 2 draft windows on my screen. The first was addressed to Eleanor Pace, the board of directors, and the general counsel of Pacebridge Capital. The second was addressed to the secure tip line of the State Financial Crimes Division. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of roasted beans and impending victory. I clicked "Send Now," then I clicked it again. I leaned back, visualizing the data packets flying through the fiber optic cables, invisible missiles locked onto a single target, miles away, in the glass and steel tower of Pacebridge Capital. I knew exactly what was happening. Garrett would be walking into the executive conference room right about now. He would be wearing his lucky navy suit. He would smile at the administrative assistant as he dropped his phone into the security basket outside the door, a mandatory protocol for high-level strategy meetings. He would walk in there thinking he was about to be named managing partner. He would think the silence in the room was respectful. He had no idea that the silence was actually the sound of a fuse burning down. At 9:07, a notification popped up on my tracking dashboard. "Eleanor Pace has opened your email." I took a sip of coffee. At 9:09, 3 more notifications chimed in rapid succession. Board Member J. Reynolds has opened your email. General Counsel S. Wu has opened your email. Board Member A. Vance has opened your email. At 9:15, the heavy artillery landed. File downloaded 1907. Haynes dinner video, MP4. File downloaded Brady Consulting Shell Company lease, PDF. File downloaded text message log bribery, PDF. I watched the download bars turn green. It felt like listening to glass breaking, one window after another. The illusion of Garrett's integrity was being shattered. I imagined Eleanor Pace's face, that steely matriarch of finance, watching the video of her star partner pouring scotch for a government official in a secret apartment, promising kickbacks. I minimized the tracking window and maximized the media player. I had synced the hidden camera in Unit 1907 to a private cloud server. It was time for the matinee. The screen flickered to life. The wide-angle lens captured the living room of the condo in high definition. Marisol was there. She was humming to herself, fluffing the pillows on the gray velvet sectional, the same sofa where Garrett had betrayed me a dozen times over. She moved to the wet bar, arranging crystal glasses. "Mr. Brady always tips well when the night goes late," she muttered to herself, her voice clear on the sensitive microphone. She checked her watch, then wiped down the counter. I watched her, feeling a pang of sympathy. She was an unwitting extra in a disaster movie. At 11 o'clock, the door to the apartment opened. Garrett walked in. He looked triumphant. He was followed by Lena Hart, who was wearing a dress that was definitely not compliant with the corporate dress code, and Robert Haynes, the silver-haired director of the pension fund. They must have skipped the end of the meeting, or perhaps Garrett had left early to seal the deal in private, arrogant enough to believe the promotion was already his. "Welcome, Robert," Garrett said, gesturing grandly to the view of the river. "This is the spot I was telling you about. Much better than a stuffy boardroom, right?" Haynes laughed, A low, greedy sound. Incredible view. Garrett. And very private. Does the firm keep this for all the partners? Garrett winked. He actually winked. No. This is off the books. Strictly personal use. My wife thinks I am buried in compliance meetings all day. It is convenient to have a place to stay the night where she does not ask questions. I sat in my kitchen, gripping the edge of the table. It is convenient to have a place to stay the night where she does not ask questions. Every word was a nail in his coffin. He was confessing to the camera he did not know was there, broadcasting his duplicity to the wife he thought was blind. Lena giggled, pouring wine into the glasses Marisol had set out. You are terrible, Garrett. Bella thinks you are a saint. I am a provider. Lena, Garrett said, taking a glass. I do what I have to do to keep everyone happy. On my laptop screen, a new email notification slid into view, overlaying the video of their toast. From Pacebridge IT Security System, subject access alert, status effective immediately, all system access for user Garrett. Brady has been suspended pending investigation. I looked at the time. 11:23. The corporate immune system had reacted. They were cutting out the infection. Simultaneously, my phone buzzed with an alert from the smart home app I still had linked to his office credentials. Security badge. 4092. Flagged for manual review. Access denied at main turnstile. It was happening. The walls were closing in. But on the screen, Garrett was still laughing. Raising his glass to Robert Haynes. To the new allocation, he said. To privacy. Haynes replied. And then, at 11:30, reality made contact. Marisol, who was in the kitchen area tidying up, turned around. Mr. Brady, your personal phone is vibrating. You left it on the counter. Garrett frowned. Annoyed at the interruption, he set his drink down. Excuse me for a second. Probably just the wife asking about dinner. He walked over and picked up the phone. I watched his face. The annoyance vanished instantly. It was replaced by confusion, then shock, and finally, a drain of color so total it looked like he was about to faint. He walked out onto the balcony, sliding the glass door shut, but he did not know the microphone was sensitive enough to pick up his muffled shouting through the glass. What do you mean? Suspended, he yelled. That is impossible. I am with the client right now. Who authorized this? Eleanor, put Eleanor on the phone. He listened. He paced. He ran a hand through his perfect hair. Ruining the style. What video? He screamed. What do you mean? The email came from my house. He stopped. He turned slowly and looked back into the apartment. He looked past Lena, past Haynes, and seemed to stare directly into the lens of the camera hidden in the bookshelf. He knew, in that split second, he realized it was not a glitch. It was not a mistake. It was me. My phone on the kitchen island lit up. Garrett Brady calling. I reached out and tapped decline. It lit up again immediately. Garrett Brady calling. I slid the toggle on the side of my phone. Do not disturb. I wanted him to hear the silence. I wanted him to feel exactly what I had felt for the last 14 nights, the hollow, echoing silence of a partner who refuses to answer. But this time, the silence was not a symptom of abandonment. It was a weapon. The text messages started pouring in. I watched them scroll down my lock screen like credits at the end of a tragedy. Bella, pick up. Bella, there is a mistake at the office. They say someone sent them files. Did you touch my laptop? Bella, this is serious. They are talking about the police. They have a video. How do they have a video? Please, we can talk about this. I can explain. It is not what it looks like. I picked up my phone and took a screenshot of the desperate stream of texts. I saved it to the Condos and Crimes folder. It was the final piece of evidence consciousness of guilt. On the live stream, the scene was dissolving into chaos. Garrett had come back inside, frantic. He was trying to usher Haynes out, but Haynes looked suspicious now. Sensing the panic, Lena was looking at her phone, presumably checking her own work email, and her hand flew to her mouth. She had just received her termination notice. Garrett was shouting at Marisol to leave. He was pulling at his tie like it was a noose. I closed the laptop. The show was over. The next act had to be performed in person. I walked to the junk drawer in the kitchen. I pulled out the copy of the key to Unit 1907 that I had made 3 days ago. The metal felt cool and heavy in my palm. I was not going to hide here in Seabrook Heights. I was not going to wait for him to come home and spin his lies. I checked my reflection in the hallway mirror. I looked calm. I looked like a woman who had just balanced the books. I grabbed my purse. It is time to go downtown. I said to the empty house, I was going to walk into that apartment. I was going to look him in the eye while the ruins of his life were still smoking around him, and I was going to ask him if he planned on staying the night again, because after today, he certainly wouldn't be sleeping at our house. I arrived at Baywater Towers just as the sun was setting. I texted Marisol to meet me in the lobby. When the elevator doors opened, she looked nervous, clutching her cleaning caddy like a shield. "Mrs. Brady?" she asked. "Is everything okay?" I looked her in the eye. "Marisol, I need you to let me into Unit 1907. I need to be there before my husband arrives." She hesitated, shifting her weight. "But Mr. Brady, he said no one is allowed in when he is not there." "I am his wife, Marisol," I said gently. "And tonight, I am the only one who can stop what is coming." She swiped her pass card. We rode up in silence. When the door clicked open, she looked at me with wide, fearful eyes, realizing she had been facilitating a lie for over a year. "I did not know," she whispered. "I swear." "I know," I said. "Go home, Marisol." I sat on the sofa. It was the same gray velvet sectional I had seen on the live stream. It felt cold. The apartment was dark, lit only by the ambient glow of the city skyline drifting in through the floor-to-ceiling windows. On the coffee table in front of me, I placed a thick manila folder and a large white envelope. They did not contain love letters. They contained a petition for divorce and an emergency court order freezing every single asset we owned. My phone vibrated. I picked it up. It was a text from my 13-year-old son. "Noah, Mom, Grandma let us order pizza. Are you coming by?" I felt a crack in my armor. I typed back slowly. "Not tonight. Sweetie, Dad has some work trouble, and I'm helping him fix it. I am okay. Stay with Grandma. I will see you tomorrow morning." I added a heart emoji. I wanted to protect them. They were sleeping in a house that smelled of cookies and safety, completely unaware that their mother was sitting in a sniper's nest waiting to blow up their father's world. At exactly 9 o'clock, the electronic lock on the front door chirped. Beep. Beep, beep, click. The door swung open. Garrett walked in first. He looked like a man who had been running a marathon in a suit. His tie was loose, his hair was disheveled, and his eyes were wild. Behind him trailed Lena. She looked even worse. Her mascara was smudged, and she was hugging her arms around herself as if she were freezing. "I just need a drink," Garrett muttered, not looking at the living room. "We need to figure out who sent that file." "Garrett," Lena whimpered. HR said, "Shut up, Lena," he snapped. "I will fix it. I always fix it." He reached for the light switch. The room flooded with harsh, artificial brightness, and there I was, sitting perfectly still on the sofa, my hands folded over the divorce papers. Garrett jumped back as if he had been electrocuted. "Jesus!" he shouted. Lena let out a small scream, stumbling back into the doorframe. "Welcome home, Garrett," I said. My voice was calm. It was the voice I used when I caught a client trying to hide a Cayman Islands account. For a second, no one moved. The silence was heavy enough to crush lungs. Then Lena looked from me to Garrett, her eyes wide with panic. "You said she never comes downtown," she blurted out. Her voice was high and accusing. "You said she is afraid of the city." It was such a perfect, damning sentence. It confirmed every lie he had told about me. Garrett recovered first. The shock on his face twisted into a desperate, manic mask of control. He stepped between me and Lena, holding up his hands. "Okay," he said, breathless. "Okay, Bella, listen to me. This looks bad. I know how this looks, but you need to calm down." "I am calm," I said. "I am incredibly calm." This is a workspace," Garrett stammered, gesturing vaguely at the room. "Lena is my assistant. We are just debating a crisis. Someone hacked the company. Bella, I am a victim here. I laughed. It was a dry, sharp sound. A victim, I repeated. I reached forward and picked up the first photograph from the table. I slid it across the glass surface toward him. Is this debriefing? It was the screenshot of the text message, "Wine at 19:07 after he leaves creates the right mood." Garrett stared at it. His jaw worked, but no sound came out. And this? I slid the second paper. It was the receipt for the sushi dinner for two. And this? The third paper. The bill for the diamond bracelet he bought last Christmas, the one I never received. Bella, stop, he pleaded, his voice cracking. We can talk about this at home. Not here, not in front of her. But this is your home, isn't it? I asked. You have been staying the night again for months. I just thought we should have a family meeting in your primary residence. I turned my gaze to Lena. She was trembling, pressing herself against the wall. And you? I said. Lena Hart. She flinched. I didn't know. She stammered. He told me you were separated. He told me you lived in the guest house. He tells a lot of stories, I said. But here's a non-fiction story for you. I picked up a single sheet of paper from the folder. It was a printout of an email that had hit my inbox 20 minutes ago. You probably haven't checked your personal email yet, I said, holding it out to her, since your work access was revoked. Lena stepped forward tentatively and took the paper. What is this? She whispered. It is a notification from the Pacebridge Legal Department, I explained. Copied to me, because I am the whistleblower. It says that you are named as a co-conspirator in the bribery investigation. They are not just firing you, Lena. They are hanging you out to dry. Lena read the paper. Her face went chalk white. But, she looked up at Garrett, you said you would protect me. You said I was just a junior staffer. You said they couldn't touch me. Garrett refused to look at her. He was staring at me, his eyes filled with hatred. You, he hissed at me. You sent this, you did this to her. I did it to the team, I corrected. You two are a team, right? It is a lie, Lena screamed at him, throwing the paper at his chest. You told me I was safe. You told me if I was just nice to Mr. Haynes, you would get me the promotion. You said it was standard practice. Garrett grabbed her arm. Shut up, Lena. Do not say another word. My phone rang. It was a FaceTime audio call. I checked the caller ID. Thomas Reed. Perfect timing, I said. I tapped the answer and put it on the speaker. I set the phone down on the coffee table between the divorce papers and the sushi receipts. Bella, Thomas's voice filled the room, deep and authoritative. I am here, Thomas, I said. And Garrett is here too, along with Ms. Hart. Good, Thomas said. Save me a trip. Garrett stared at the phone. Who is that? Mr. Brady, Thomas said. This is Investigator Thomas Reed with the State Financial Crimes Division. I am calling to inform you that as of tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, formal subpoenas will be issued for you and Ms. Hart regarding the bribery of a municipal official. Garrett felt for the chair behind him and sat down hard. This is a courtesy call, Thomas continued. Do not leave the city. Do not try to access your offshore accounts. And do not destroy any more evidence. We have cloud backups. You can't do this, Garrett whispered. It is already done. Thomas said. Good night, Bella. Good night, Thomas. I hung up. The silence returned. But this time it was broken by the sound of Lena crying. It wasn't a soft cry. It was the ugly, gasping sob of someone realizing their life is over. He made me do it, Lena choked out, pointing a shaking finger at Garrett. Garrett whipped his head around. Lena, stop. No, she screamed. She looked at me, her eyes desperate. Mrs. Brady, listen to me. I didn't want to. He told me if I didn't come here, if I didn't entertain Mr. Haynes, he would blacklist me. He said I would never work in finance again. I watched her. I believed her. Garrett was a predator. He preyed on ambition just as easily as he preyed on love. He told me the apartment was a perk, Lena sobbed. He said everyone did it. He made me pour the drinks. He made me sit on Haynes's lap. You lying little... Garrett lunged toward her. Sit down, I barked. The authority in my voice stopped him cold. He froze, then sank back onto the chair. She will testify, I said to Garrett. She will trade her testimony for immunity, and she will give them everything, the dates, the times, the coercion. You won't just go down for bribery. Garrett, you will go down for extortion. Garrett looked at me. The arrogance was gone. The charm was gone. There was only a raw, ugly panic. Bella, he said. His voice was trembling. Bella, please, think about the kids. Think about Noah and Lily. You are destroying their father. You are destroying my life. I stood up. I towered over him as he slumped in that expensive leather chair. I looked around the apartment. I looked at the view he loved so much. I looked at the hidden camera still blinking in the bookshelf. I thought about the nights I spent alone in our big house, wondering if he was safe, wondering if he was eating well, wondering if he missed me. I thought about the trust fund he tried to steal. I thought about the pillowcases Marisol asked about. I am not destroying your life, Garrett, I said softly. I reached down and picked up the burner phone, the one I had planted back in the drawer earlier, and tossed it into his lap. I am just returning what you gave me, I said. With interest, I turned to Lena. Get a lawyer, I told her. A good one. And tell the truth. It is the only thing that will save you now. I walked to the door. Where are you going? Garrett yelled after me. You can't leave me here. I paused with my hand on the handle. I looked back at him one last time. He looked small. He looked pathetic. He looked like a stranger. I am going home to my children, I said. This is your home now. Garrett, enjoy the view. I walked out and let the heavy door click shut, sealing them inside their glass cage. I did not leave immediately. There was one final piece of administrative business to conclude. I turned back from the door and walked to the glass coffee table, where the ruins of Garrett's evening were scattered. I reached into my purse and pulled out the heavy cream envelope I had been carrying all day. I placed it squarely on top of the sushi receipt. What is that? Garrett asked. His voice was hoarse, stripped of all its usual smooth confidence. That is the exit strategy, I said. Inside is a settlement agreement. It is very simple. You will vacate the house in Seabrook Heights immediately. You will renounce any claim to the trusteeship of my family inheritance. You will admit to marital misconduct in the divorce filing, which will grant me primary custody of Noah and Lily. Garrett stared at the envelope. The color rose in his cheeks, a flush of angry desperation. You cannot do that, he spat. I am their father. Bella, you cannot just erase me. I have rights. You have the right to remain silent, I said coldly. But as for the children, you can still see them. You can visit them. You can take them to dinner. I leaned in, my voice dropping to a whisper that cut through the room like a razor wire. But you will never, ever stay the night with them in a place like this. You will never have them around a woman you are hiding from the world, and you will never make them wonder where their father is sleeping again. Garrett opened his mouth to argue, to throw another manipulation my way, but he was interrupted by a sound that ended the conversation permanently. It was a heavy, authoritative knock at the door. Boom, boom, boom. Garrett jumped. Lena let out a small, terrified squeak. I checked my watch. It was 9:30. Thomas Reed was nothing if not punctual. Who is that? Garrett whispered. I imagine it is the consequences of your actions, I said. I walked past him and opened the door. Standing in the hallway were two uniformed security guards from Baywater Towers, looking grave. Behind them stood a man in a cheap suit with a badge hanging around his neck, accompanied by two uniformed officers. Mrs. Brady, the man in the suit asked. Yes, I said, stepping aside. This is Unit 1907, the one you are looking for. The man stepped into the apartment. He did not look at the view. He did not look at the expensive furniture. He looked directly at Garrett. Garrett Brady. Garrett stood up. his hands trembling. Yes. Who are you? I am Agent Miller with the State Financial Crimes Division, the man said. He held up a piece of paper. We have a warrant to secure this premise and seize all electronic devices and physical documents related to the investigation of bribery involving the City Municipal Pension Fund. Garrett looked at me. His eyes were wide, filled with a childlike disbelief. He really thought he was untouchable. He really thought the rules were for other people. You called them, he gasped. I forwarded a tip, I corrected. Thomas Reed sends his regards. Agent Miller signaled to the officers. Secure the devices. The room suddenly swarmed with activity. It was a montage of destruction. One officer moved to the kitchen island and bagged Garrett's laptop. Another picked up the burner phone I had thrown at him. A third began emptying the drawers where the shell company files were kept. It was clinical. It was efficient. It was the total dismantling of a man's life in real time. Garrett tried to protest. Wait, that is my work laptop. You cannot take that. It has privileged client data. That is exactly why we are taking it, sir, Agent Miller said, not even looking up as he sealed an evidence bag. Lena was sitting on the edge of the sofa, hugging her knees. She looked young and small and completely out of her depth. She watched the officers bagging the evidence of the life she thought she was winning. She looked up at me. Her eyes were red and swollen. Mrs. Brady, she whispered. I looked down at her. Do you hate me? She asked. Her voice was barely audible over the sound of the officers searching the bedroom. I looked at her, really looked at her. I saw the fear. I saw the ambition that had been twisted against her. I saw a girl who had believed a powerful man when he told her that breaking the rules was the only way to win. I do not hate you, Lena, I said honestly. I hate the man who used us both as tools. I hate the man who treated me like an appliance, and you like a recreational vehicle. I gestured to the officers. If you want to survive this, I said, tell them the truth. Tell them everything. Do not protect him, because he is certainly not going to protect you. She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. I saw the resolve harden in her eyes. She would talk, and when she did, Garrett would not just lose his job, he would lose his freedom. Agent Miller walked over to Garrett with a clipboard. Mr. Brady, I need you to sign this inventory receipt for the seized items. You are advised not to leave the jurisdiction. Garrett took the pen. His hand was shaking so violently that he could barely hold it. He scribbled something that looked like a seismograph reading of an earthquake. He handed the clipboard back and looked at me. The hatred in his eyes was absolute. It was a pure, unadulterated loathing. If looks could kill, I would have dropped dead on the oak floor. You are happy now, he hissed. You destroyed everything. You burned it all down. I met his gaze. I did not blink. I did not flinch. I felt absolutely nothing. The love was gone. The anger was gone. There was only the cool, quiet satisfaction of a balance sheet that finally zeroed out. I did not burn it down. Garrett, I said. I just turned on the lights. You were the one playing with matches. I turned to leave. I walked to the door, my heels clicking rhythmically on the floor. Before I stepped out into the hallway, I paused. I looked back at the room one last time. I looked at the unmade bed in the background, the bed where he had slept with her, the bed Marisol had worried about. Good night, Garrett, I said softly. Enjoy it. This will be the last night you sleep here as the owner. I walked out. I stepped into the elevator. Agent Miller stepped in with me, holding a large plastic bag containing Garrett's digital life. The doors began to slide shut. Through the narrowing gap, I saw Garrett standing in the middle of the living room. He was alone. Lena had moved to the corner, distancing herself. The officers were ignoring him. He looked small. He looked trapped. He looked like a man who had realized too late that he was not the player, but the piece. The doors clicked shut, cutting off the view. The only sound in the elevator was the soft hum of the motor and the sharp zip of a plastic evidence seal being tightened. I walked out of Baywater Towers and into the cool night air. The valet brought my car around. As I slid into the driver's seat, My phone buzzed. It was a message from my lawyer. Patricia, the judge just signed the emergency order. His accounts are frozen. The trust fund is locked down. He cannot withdraw a single cent tonight. I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 2 weeks. The knot in my chest loosened. The heavy weight on my shoulders dissolved. I put the car in gear and drove away from the city. The drive back to Seabrook Heights was peaceful. The city lights faded in my rearview mirror, replaced by the dark, quiet canopy of the suburbs. I did not play music. I just listened to the sound of the tires on the asphalt and the wind rushing past. I pulled into the driveway of my house. It was dark, save for the amber glow of the porch light and a faint light in the kitchen where my mother had left a lamp on for me. It was not a glamorous penthouse. It did not have a view of the river or a concierge, but it was honest, it was real, and it was mine. I walked inside. The house smelled of lavender and peace. I went into the kitchen and saw 2 mugs sitting on the counter, ready for hot chocolate in the morning. Noah and Lily would be home tomorrow. We would have breakfast. We would talk. I took my phone out of my pocket. I looked at the screen one last time. 89 missed calls, dozens of frantic texts, the digital debris of a man who had lost control. I turned the phone off. I placed it face down on the table. There would be no more questions about pillowcases. There would be no more wondering. There would be no more again. The story ended here, in the quiet of my kitchen, with the door locked, and the truth finally, beautifully exposed. I walked up the stairs to my bedroom, ready to sleep in a bed that belonged only to me. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please comment below and let me know your location and what you thought of Bella's revenge. Do not forget to subscribe to Zoe Revenge Stories, like this video, and hit that hype button so we can share more satisfying stories like this one with people all over the world.